Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, or good day wherever you are in the world, and welcome to the next episode of No Dice, No Glory. Sponsored by our jobs that actually pay us money, we're coming to you not at all live from an abandoned arms factory deep under a mountain in West Virginia. We are proud to proffer to you the finest in wargaming coverage. Without any further ado, let's get this show on the road.
Hey, well, thank you, Sean. And we're here for another great episode of No Dice, No Glory. And this is a special one because if you guys have been checking out our Facebook page over the last few months, actually, you've been seeing us talk about a game called Heart of Leviathan. And I am so excited. And we're here with two creators of Heart of Leviathan, Walter and Davis Vail. Hey, welcome, guys.
Hey, Mitch, how are you doing?
Hey,
Hey,
Mitch.
Walter.
Thank you for inviting us.
Hey, no problem, man. I've been so excited about this game. Now, this podcast is going to release on Tuesday, July 2nd. And folks should know on Friday, July 5th, the day after Independence Day, you actually can order this game. So I'm excited for it. So look, I am going to go for the first basic question here with you guys. Why'd you guys create this game? Well, let's go back one. What is Heart of Leviathan for those who have not seen the all the Facebook posts we have put on?
Yeah, right. It's a miniatures game that's intended to be a quick playing, hard hitting type of game that you can play right across the table with an opponent. And I think Mitch, you said it best. It's kind of a beer and pretzels type game.
Yeah, it most certainly is, and I kind of like beer and pretzels type games. So it's using, and what scale of the battleships in this game would you say?
The battleships are roughly 1/1200 scale, but we took some artistic liberty and shortened the ships by a third to kind of give it a more fun character to it. Since we were condensing the ranges used, a lot of the other rules, we condensed the length of the battleships, keeping them at prototypical width and height.
Yeah, I think the models look beautiful. I just finished painting the Margraf from the recent box set, and they just look beautiful. So you guys, like, now we could go into, so why'd you guys create this game? Did you feel there was a need for it out there? Is it you personally like battleships? I mean, where'd all this come from?
Yeah, I think what you hit on last is it. It's been a pet project of mine for years now, and just trying to bring something that's a little different than what's generally out there, where you got a real in-depth kind of gameplay, really detailed models, and try to condense all that in something a little more fun, and wanting to recreate models themselves that were a little different than what's already available.
Yeah, I mean, the models. I mean, folks, just go to imagestudios.com and check out these models. They are awesome. And I've dabbled really in 1/2400 and 1/6000 scale. So I usually like a big crowded table, but this game kind of works with just the one or two ships that we've been play testing. Um, so how long did it take you guys to develop the rules and to develop the models?
Well, we both kind of added to that. I'm more of a model type developing guy, and had what in mind that I wanted to do with the game itself. I figured out what I wanted to do with the models early on, and that's where Davis comes in. And I'll let him take that about the games. I approached him about doing it because he's played a lot of games, had a lot of experience at it, and he knew exactly what I had in mind and had envisioned for the concept of this game.
Yeah, I think before we do that, Davis, let's get some of your gaming creds up there. I heard that you're pretty good in a couple of games.
Yeah, Mitch. So I've been in the X-wing scene primarily for miniatures recently. Since that game released, they just recently had their 2.0 release. So that's been going well. I've flown in some pretty top-notch tournaments there, official tournaments, and placed high. So I've been embedded in that game and played with its rules and seen how things could be better and how it could be worse. And
Well,
before, yeah, go ahead.
no, I heard you are pretty good at X-Wing. I don't have the standings too, but I'm sure I'll see your name towards the top, correct?
On some tournaments, yes, you might see that.
Yeah, I mean it's a fun game. We could play it, and you took some of and let's just look at the genesis of these rules. Some of the mechanics are kind of similar to that game.
Yeah, so when my dad initially approached me, he told me the details of the game. He wanted it to be a kind of a quick playing game. He could sit down, set it up, and play a game in an hour, and then be done with it. Not a long, need to devote a whole Saturday to it kind of game. And not tons of ships, on the map at the same time. Just a few, so very tactical. Based game. So I was like, well, that's pretty similar to the way that X-Wing is handling things. And I think I think I can work with that. So yeah, the base formula is similar to what you might see in X-Wing or Armada.
Yeah, and it by no means is it unique to those two games. A lot of games use some of the range scales. I mean, even for X-Wing and Armada, some of that's really not unique. But let's just go to like the heart of the game. And for you guys, it's you look at it right now with the starter pack, and we're going to get into that in detail. It's 2v2. It's 2 Iron Duke class battleships against 2 Koenig class battleships. And take us through how a game is set up and plays out.
Okay, yeah, it's basically set up designed to play on a 3-foot by 3-foot square playing surface. You could play on a bigger one if you wanted to. And if you added more ships, you could play on a much bigger surface. And it's designed to be a one person per ship playing, but it could be one person could command a whole squadron of ships. And it's basically a setup that you outfit your ships with a refit or upgrades that we call them, and make them unique. It could be unique for every game, as a matter of fact, or and just kind of build a point system based on that.
It's interesting that you say one person per ship, because as we've been play testing it, and then when I brought it to Cold Wars, we did because I have a lot of the ships from, all your different iterations of starter packs. We're able to play like where everybody had 1 or 2 ships. And the game actually kind of plays well that way. Once the team kind of decides on who's going to go when, if you look at the rules, it just has 2 opponents. But this actually is not a bad multiplayer game. Is that something you guys intended as you were creating it, or just kind of happened?
Yeah, so the game itself is very modular the way it's been created. You can add ships to your squadron or to your fleet, or take away. You can have one ship per person and have 10 people playing the game, or you can have 30 ships per person with 2 people. It's kind of just whatever you come up with, you can make it happen.
So the game is set at I think we've been playing roughly around 200 points. So, and you guys correct me as I take everybody through this. So I have my battleship, and I have to take a captain. I could take a 0-point captain, or I could take a captain that has some perks to him. But I think some of the 0-point captains have some pretty good perks. Then I look to upgrade, depending on that captain, I look to upgrade my crew. I can upgrade my guns. I can buy, well, this is in the next iteration, extra weapons like torpedoes and mines. I can I can make my ship more resilient where I could take more damage. As folks do that, I mean, do you think 200 points is the right setup for the game, or is there like 100 points per ship? I mean, how do you guys look at that as far as how folks are going to start playing this game?
So I think the 200 points is a better way to go than 100 points. 200 points allows you more granularity as far as the costing of things, because in a 100-point scale system, you might have an upgrade that does something, and it may cost too much at 5 points, but it may cost too little at 4 points, to the point that if it costs 4 points, then everybody's taking it on every ship that can. But on the 200-point scale, you can adjust that. You can say, well, that's 13 points instead of 15 points, and you can find that sweet spot.
Yeah, and I noticed that some of the upgrades are also they're particular to ships, different classes of ships, which the starter pack's only going to have battleships, as well as different nationalities. Because as we all know, British ships tend to have bigger guns, and German ships tend to take more damage. They were more heavily armored. Was that something, as you guys were developing the mechanics, you wanted the gamers to know and experience, because it's almost like a history lesson you're giving them?
Yeah, exactly. That was in the background of the way I wanted to design it, kind of taking into account that the Germans were a little more accurate at distant, further ranges. Like you said, the British ships had a better quality guns. And a 15-inch gun on a German battleship is not the same as a 15-inch gun on a British battleship. So
Yep.
yeah, to bring all that into play was kind of the goal.
Yeah, and the game represents that smoothly. And folks that have been probably listening to me, unfortunately, for years, every time they hear me talk about naval games, I love the science behind it. Is that one of the things, as you guys were creating the game, that you really wanted to show gamers that these are big weapons of the time, and the technology was like, it blew people away back then? Is that something you want to make sure that you really imparted that as well with some of the gamers?
Uh,
It
yeah,
sounds
ex-
like
e- yeah, exactly. And that's why we put one of the critical damage cards is you sunk immediately chance to get that, because that did actually happen in real life, and because of the
3 times.
yeah
3
yeah
times in one day.
yeah
Yeah.
yeah, it's because of the way that some things are neglected on the British ships. That that's part of the game. Now you can leave that card out if you want to, but to play historically, that it needs to be left in.
And so going back, have you always been a big fan of the big gun battleship?
Oh, I have, absolutely. It's kind of a lot of the romance is left when we got to World War II out of that. And it was one interesting thing about the World War One era was how chivalrous the uh, the actions were to begin the war. And I didn't end up that way, but it was more a gentleman's war to begin with.
Yeah, it was, and there's so many great stories. One of the things that's not in your game is like Count von Luckner with the Sea Adler. I don't know if you know that story, and if you don't, I will send you the book. And essentially, this was a guy, a very rich German, who had a commerce raider, made it all the way out to the Pacific, and it was a sailing ship. And his opponents really respected him too. So you do have that of that period, and I'm kind of glad that flavors in the game. How long did it take you guys from when you two guys sat down and said, we're going to do this, to where we are today?
Well, I probably approached Davis when the design, the graphic part, actual design of the game was pretty much set. There was some refinement to do, and then that didn't take a lot of time. We didn't finish any of the details yet. Jason Jensen, who's a great artist, helped me with do some of the preliminary work. And then when it got to the ships, I decided to use the actual 3D models of the ships for some of the graphics. And then I had all these components that made a neat game, and then I got to it's like, well, how to put it all together? That's when I talked to Davis about it.
Yeah, and let's go into the starter pack. So starter pack's going to go on sale on the 5th. What am I getting with that starter pack?
With the starter pack, you get everything you need to begin an engagement, to begin fist fight with an opponent across a table. You get everything you need for 2 battleships, 2 dreadnoughts for each side, super dreadnoughts, uh, like you've already mentioned, the two Iron Duke class ships for the British, two Koenig class ships for the Germans. They're unique in some cases abilities with the upgrade cards, and you get the maneuvering templates that you need to move your ships, and anything else, the tokens like obstacle tokens, mines, shoals, or things like that you need to set up a playing area.
Yeah, and let me tell you guys out there that are listening, go check out the pictures for this game. The tokens are thick cardboard, very colorful. And you know what's interesting? One of the first few things, and I mentioned this in the article that will be popping up when the game releases, actually the Monday after, was one of the first conversations you and I had, Walter, was, do you know the symbols, the crests of the ships? Because back then, every ship, even today, has a unique crest, like a coat of arms. And I'm like, I'm a naval grog here, man. I have no idea how to find that, but you have them in the game, and they're beautiful. Um, eh, you know, just going on a little bit more, all the tokens, templates, ships, everything comes in the game. Minefield, shoals, smoke markers. So just for one purchase, you can play a 2v2 battleship game. And here's something that I mentioned in the article, and somebody stopped me at an event because they said, "Hey, when is Heart of Leviathan coming out?" And I said, "It's coming out soon." And the guy was like, "I'm not much of a painter, but you mentioned at one time that you can play with the ship bases because they're beautiful looking." And he goes, "I'm never going to paint my ships because I'll never do them justice, but I can play it a half hour after I get the box." I thought that was pretty cool. Was that something you guys had in mind as you were developing the game?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll talk on that one. I've seen that uh, since starting into Warhammer 40K many years ago, and then into X-wing at a little lesser extent. But there's definitely different types of people. There's the guys that want to customize their armies with their own specific paint jobs and flags and banners, and then there's the guys who have no desire to do that. And neither way is wrong. So I was like, well, let's see if we can do something that would cater to both sides.
Yeah, you guys do a really good job with that. But the models themselves, like and I'll just say it here, you guys have seen my stuff on the website. I am the worst painter on No Dice, No Glory. And that is God's honest truth, because if you look at, we have master painters on the site, but painting battleships, guys, is not that hard. I think mine come out pretty decent, but the ships are just beautiful to build them. And you don't even have to paint them. They come gray.
Yeah, right. They come with just a few parts. That was the intent, to come with just a few parts. So if you're not kit building in minded, you can put them together very simply with a little bit of super glue, and then just spray paint them gray. I mean, just hit them with gray or leave them like they are. The counters on the images on the counters are the actual ships, just 3D renderings of the actual ships themselves.
Yeah, all that stuff looks great. So I get the starter pack. I have the 2v2 I can play with, and because I can use different upgrade cards, every encounter will come out differently. The game takes off. Tell us what we have in store for the future.
Well, we'll be adding. We'll finish the ships, the sister ships for both the Iron Duke class and the Koenig class, of course, and have them ready. There's 2 more ships in each class, and then we plan to introduce all new ships as sister classes all at one time, and some will be 4, 5, or 3, whatever it is. And first would be. Go ahead.
No, sorry, I'm dying to know the sister classes.
Yeah. First, the first ones which are ready to be released will be Queen Elizabeth, and then the Helgoland class on the German side. And these are in production right now. Should be ready to go by the time we ship all of the pre-orders.
I have one of the Helgolands, and it's interesting because the Helgolands are the first German dreadnoughts, and then the Queen Elizabeths are the super 15-inch gun dreadnoughts. I'm sure they're going to be pointed way different between those two classes of ships.
Yeah, it's going to be, and each one will come with unique advantage cards. to help set them off even further.
So you'd be able to play them one against each other?
Right. You can play, just take your pick. You can play kind of a smorgasbord of whatever you want to do.
So after these two classes, any other battleships? Because I know a lot of guys like me, we want to see those battle cruisers eventually. the fast cats.
Right. Absolutely. They're in the works. We've had some interest in the U.S. battleships, which played they kind of came in at the tail end of the war, but a lot of what-if scenarios. And then the French and Italian and Russian ships, they didn't have as big a play in the sea battles, but could have.
And you may or may not see some periscopes sticking up out of the water here soon too.
Yeah, which I totally want to talk about. So one of the things, and I'm just bringing this up when I put up something about the game coming out, was somebody goes, well, Beer and Pretzel's game. And, about how all of the historical scenarios are not balanced. Helgoland Bight, any of the North Sea actions, even Jutland, you can say was a little bit mismatched. That bringing in some of these other ships, I think is amazing, because with my collection of 12400, I got Argentine ships, I have Brazilian ships, I have Turkish ships, I have Greek ships, I have the entire US 6 battle fleet, which served at Scapa Flow for the British. Now, these guys never got into big combat, and that is the thing about this period, I think, for me, that is most fascinating, that this period existed, and then within 10 years after the end of the Great War, everything was airplanes and aircraft carriers. The what if, and I think as gamers, that has got to be one of the most interesting things that we could play. Is that, like, as you move forward, it's the what ifs that I think you guys are trying to get at?
Yeah, exactly. That's because it's not historical, but it could have been type thing. And the French fleet stayed in harbor most of the war. I mean, what if they'd come out? What if they'd done something? What if all of the ships had been in play for the Germans? What would have shown then? How would Jutland have ended up as some of the British battleships had not been there?
Right. Exactly. I mean, it's such a what if. And then for wargaming purists that want everything historical, you only have 3 or 4 things to play. But looking at, like, some of the more interesting fleet engagements, is the Battle of Falklands really a fair fight with a battle cruiser against 2 German armored cruisers? It's not. But you could play it in this game. And as we move forward in the game, one of the things we started play testing in the original set that you sent us was the cruisers. So you have these light cruisers. The light cruisers do really well against the battleship because of the torpedo. Are we going to see a lot of light ships coming in the future?
Definitely we will. The cruisers, the light cruisers are on the way. We'll be having both the Emden and the Dresden for the Germans, which were, their day was around the Falkland Islands and Curacao, but before that. And then we'll do for the British side, we'll have the Weymouth, who opposed the Emden during that battle. So yeah, and what we tried to do originally, we were planning to do the core game with 2 light cruisers with their torpedoes against one super dreadnought with the British, and try to even that game out. And I think from the play testing you saw, it did a pretty good job with that. The torpedoes are deadly.
Yeah, they are. But it's just interesting. It's one of the things that especially when I bring this to an event, people wanted to be able to do the battleship on battleship. That seemed to be really popular. But the cruisers, once those cruisers come out, that's a totally different game I can play without battleships at that point.
Yeah, the battleships. I mean, like I said earlier, it's an entirely modular game. So you could, you as a player could decide, well, I don't really care for the slow lumbering heavy cannon battleships at all, so I'm just not going to take any. And that's perfectly fine.
So how? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So the torpedoes were a really interesting thing from a development aspect, because we talked about, well, we could just make it just kind of a standard attack. You just roll dice for it if you're in range, that kind of thing. But I was like, well, I mean, it'd be really cool if they were actually on the board, like dynamically changing the landscape of the battle each turn. And so we took that and ran with it.
Yeah, so let me explain to the folks, and it's, boy, am I teasing something that's not out yet. When you unleash those torpedoes into those battleships, folks, you got to move them around. And it's as we were playing it, somebody's like, would this be historical? I'm like, yeah, because torpedoes killed battleships very quickly. And you got to pay attention to the lights. So it just is such a great dynamic of the game. Now, you mentioned periscopes. How are periscopes going to play in this game?
We plan to have another expansion, which would be destroyers and submarines. So destroyers versus submarines, and really, it's turning out to be a kind of a standalone game itself. So you could play as opposed to that to each other, or mix them in with the fleet actions. I think that's going to be a pretty exciting addition to the whole scenario, where the destroyers that can move a lot further and quicker than the battleships, and deploy the torpedoes and then get out of danger. And then the submarines that kind of slowly make their way into the mix and cause all kind of havoc.
Yeah, like in 1915, the British battlecruiser fleet under Beatty, that they were steaming, they were going to wipe the Germans out, and somebody saw a periscope, and the whole battle changed just because somebody saw a periscope. And as we know now, there were no submarines in the area, but these big ships, I mean, they have their weaknesses, and the torpedo is one of them. So I am very excited for that. So looking at the starter kit, let's look at how much of it's going to set some of these gamers back. And this is a pre-sale. When are we going to look to see these things coming in our mailboxes, and so they can make it to our table?
Okay, great. Yes, we tossed back and forth the idea of doing a Kickstarter campaign, and it really didn't. Our model didn't really fit with the Kickstarter campaign uh, model, because we're going to do a lot of the manufacturing ourselves. We'll have one other U.S.-based company that will do the box, the rules, the cards, everything else we're doing in shop. And that just didn't quite fit the mold. So we decided to go ahead and do that. And the game, Heart of Leviathan core game, will retail for $74.95. And beginning July the 5th and running about a month, it will be available for a pre-sale for $62.95, which will be about 15% off the retail price. And now you wouldn't get the game. It's to give us a chance to put this game into full production, and it's ready to go in production, just to get it produced, which will be another 2 or 3 months, and hopefully without problems, we'll plan to have it shipped out before December 1st of this year.
So one of the interesting things that people should take note of is, a lot of games and I'm personally glad you didn't go with Kickstarter. I love all the add-ins, but I know that, especially for independent gamers like you guys, independent developers, they end up giving a lot away, and sometimes that's, you have to be able to feed your production line. The other one is everything is made in the United States, I believe.
That's correct. Everything will be made in the U.S. We'll do all of it here, and the game crafter will produce a few other components.
Which is awesome. So Walter did tell you the price, but from what you get for that price, it is worth it, because you can play 10 minutes after that thing arrives in your mailbox. By the time it takes your gaming buddy to get to your house, you can have everything popped out and ready to go to play the game. And I think that is one of the neat things. When we ask people, how much do you think that, here, this is the starter set, how much do you think it would be? They all said well over between $80 and $100. So I think for getting it at that price, to get a game that's going to expand a lot, folks, I mean, I'm excited about it. I'm also very impartial here, but I think they're getting a lot for that game.
Well, we're glad to hear that. We hope so. We plan to produce the game, regardless of of what kind of response we get. We really appreciate anybody who likes to help us get this going, and we'll be really encouraged to continue with expansions and accessories for the game by the response we get.
Yeah, and let me just explain. Like, I've worked as a play tester for many, many games, and working with you guys was awesome because we all had the same goal, is to make this a really great game. And a lot of times, you would put stuff into the developers and they're like, this is not the vision we had. But you guys really, and then my thing, and gamers should really take note of this, is you guys really put in a lot of work here. But when it came time to go from, the beta to the final version, you guys really took a lot of the feedback from the play testers, and I think that makes a game better. Were there any times where a guy, and you could say it's me, it's fine, said something and you're like, yeah, I think this is a little bit out of bounds here?
Yeah, a lot of that a lot of that goes back to talking about balance. I can't remember any specific instances at the moment, but a lot of times, someone will have a bad experience with one card, one game, and say, well, that's too powerful. We need to increase the price on that, or change the attributes of it somehow. And I'm like, you have to let it play out over several different games with different players to see what the average impression is, and then you take that information.
Yeah, and I have it set up here. I mean, pointing at the table, which you guys can't see and nobody listening can see. And I've changed the cards. I've even done a 1-on-1 against 2 battleships. And I'm telling you, that plays differently than 2v2. And that's kind of what I like about the game. But the cards change things as far as the upgrades and the captains. There's so much you can do out there, but nothing's is really overbalanced. I mean, or overpowerful or nerfed. It plays really well. I think if you go out there and you play a game and you're like, yeah, I got sunk in 6 turns, which 5 turns can happen, that you probably didn't build your fleet right as to what your opponent did.
Yeah, I was just saying, one turn if you're not careful, if you just play of the dice.
I've lost my ships in 1 turn. Because when you get that, and let's just go through some of the mechanics, which I dig is, so everything's based on range. That at the furthest range, you guys incorporate plunging fire. So ships at a very long range will use red dice. Within the red dice, will have a critical hit, and I believe that's a 1 in 6 chance to get the critical hit. Is that true?
1 in 8.
Well, 1 in 8. Oh, that's right, because it's 8-sided. Okay, and so when that happens, you draw a damage card, and some of those damage cards really change what you're planning on doing. But I believe there's a few in there where your ship blows up.
Yep, there's one especially that is a powder magazine hit that you're gone in that instance, and you can take that choice to take that card out if you want to, but we feel like it had to be one, had to be part of the game, part of the set.
And I misspoke earlier. That was 1 in 6.
Oh, okay. So I am one that keeps the game in there, keeps that card in there, but I have to tell you, I've drawn it 3 times. And it's kind of stinks because it's, here's my battleship. I built it. I put a captain on it. I upgraded it. I'm doing well. I'm keeping the enemy at a gunnery range where I'm most effective. And then I draw that card. But that's historical. Folks should kind of respect that these things did happen. But if you're playing against me, you want to keep the cards in because I'll draw them. But you can always take them out, as Walter said. So as you go ahead. Sorry, Davis.
And that card's been pretty controversial in the development process, probably at every phase. Just because, like you said, you can, as a player, be doing everything right, and then you draw that card, and well, you just lost a ship. But it's been interesting because it puts the fear of that damage deck in your gameplay strategy, such that you may decide to make a less optimal move to get out of that plunging fire, just to not have to draw from that deck in case they roll a critical hit against you.
Yeah, and let me tell you, it's not just that card. I think that changes things. Like some of the damage that these ships can take, and you could roll off damage. And I want to get into ship orders pretty soon. That it changes what you guys plan to do, and that is something about the game that I love. Is that I have to have situational awareness for that turn and for the next few turns. And there's a couple of mechanics that you guys have in the game that I really like that are brand new to this game. One is for the bigger ships, you have to decide and move your turrets to either starboard or port. And then your firing arcs within the battleship, there's 3 of them. So P1 through 3 for port, S1, 2, 3 for starboard. And you have to say, this is where I'm shooting. Now, after you move, your target cannot be within that arc, or after your opponent moves, it cannot be in that arc. Why did you guys put that mechanic in the game?
So one of the initial problems we faced was that the broadside arc of a battleship is very large, and that's by design. They were supposed to be large. But for a game on this small a scale, it just didn't make for interesting things, because if a player with a battleship wanted to get an enemy ship in his arc and in one broadside arc, he could do it. There was no problem about it. The opponent really had nothing that they could do to get out of that broadside arc. So we knew pretty early on that we had to bust that up somehow. And then we figured out a way to make it a decision point for the player owning the battleship to try to learn their battleship's firing arcs so that they can position them correctly and know how their ship is going to be angled after the move, and then also try to guess on where the enemy ship is going to move. So it made it more a tactical decision making process than just a gimme.
Yeah, it's amazing. And one of the things that the playtesters brought up is, yeah, I don't like that because that's not how it was. And I'm like, well, as somebody that wrote his Air Command and Staff College on the Big Gun Battleship, that's actually, if you want to play something really historical, it should be more restrictive. That, you only had one fire director. It was all done visually. They had to range in the shots. And some games have that where you have to range in and straddle the ship. This, to me, it really shows some of the limitations these big ships had as far as fire direction. So I love that. What did the other playtesters think of that? Was that something controversial in playtesting?
Well, it came up a few times, but it's really a picture of the whole purpose of the mechanic of the game, because we want to get away from the rules, away from the ship capability, and right to the tactics. So that you got to plan ahead, just like you said. You got to plan ahead how to position your ship to take advantage of the guns, and that really plays to that effect.
Yeah, it does it great. And so, breaking down the rules, I want to get into the tactics in a second, but so at the beginning of each ship, you have the ship plotting boards, which everybody loves. Everybody loves them, and they're in the article that's coming out on Monday. And you can, if not, you can see there's plenty of pictures up on your Image Studios Facebook and webpage. But those plotting boards are amazing, and I wish every other game had them. That you set your speed, you have your hull values, and you pick a special order. And if you guys want to take us through some of those special orders and why you wanted to put them in the game.
Yeah, well, we felt like every turn needed to have a purpose that you were trying to accomplish, and um, kind of a preview of what's coming. The cruisers and the other ships have a lot more orders that they can do rather than the battleships. Now, we took away some of the capabilities of the battleships, like mine laying and torpedoes, that they really did have, and just to try to make it a fist fight between two brutes, really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so what we did with the orders, the what you'll see is that the battleships have kind of basic orders. One specific order is called a designated target order, which allows you to place a token of that ship's crest next to an enemy ship. And the next time, whenever you fire at that ship, you have the chance to spend that token to re-roll the dice that you have rolled to try to get a better hit values. So one thing we did was we removed some of those orders from the battleships and let them keep some of the basic ones like designated target, and we gave the more utility type orders like torpedoes and mines. We gave those to the smaller ships to give them kind of their own feel over the big brutes, their own use. So they the order that you give the ship kind of flavors it for that turn.
So you can designate a target. You can, one of the orders is to swing your guns to a broadside, port or starboard. You can lay smoke. You can repair your ship. And I think that's just about it for the big guys, isn't it? Probably.
Yep, that's pretty much it for them. And all of those things can come into play. Again, it gets to get back to the fight of the ships, the tactical advantage between each, between the opponents.
So one question I'm going to ask is, looking at the model, and I'll answer after you guys do. How close did you think you got to really reflecting tactical ship combat in these mechanics?
I think we took a good bit of artistic liberty in a lot of it, in some of it, to make a playable game. I know one thing that we added purely through the results from the playtesters was extending the range beyond the range ruler to a fourth range, which covers the whole table, and limiting the effect of that. And that really came into play, especially on the German side, when they routinely fired from further distances than the British did.
Yeah, without a doubt. So going through all the special rules, I went through and I said, okay, historically, how did this play out? And everything matched up. So I know that you answered it quite modestly. I'm going to go a little bit further with your answer, if that's okay. I think you guys did an amazing job reflecting tactical ship combat. And that is the sole focus of the game. There's so many things that you guys could have put in the game to make it more operational and flavor, but tactically, I think you guys hit a home run here. And I think when folks play the game, they'll say, tactically, this is extremely sound. Looking at how you would expand the rules in the future, is there any ideas that you guys have had so far?
Well, for the pre-dreadnought period, the same rules would apply in this. And if you go further into it, which phase 2 I'm calling it is World War II, that's going to change the rules considerably because of the predominant air warfare that showed up in the Pacific.
And obviously, another vessel that will highly skew how the game plays is the submarines. They're not going to play by the rules that all the other ships on the board are playing by, and they're going to force the ships to behave differently, and that's kind of their point.
So let me ask the question that I think you guys have opened up. Are you going to expand this game to before the Great War and into the World War II period, or right now just keep it where it is?
Well, right now we want to try to add as many ships as conceivable, as practical, I guess, in this period we're in. We can go to pre-dreadnought pretty easily because the rules would be the same. But yes, definitely we want to expand into World War II. I guess ideally that's kind of the goal of the whole game, was to get to World War II. But a lot of things change. I mean, a lot of things change when you go from there, not just the air war.
Yeah. Oh yeah, so much changed. Communications, which does play a role in the game as well, because with certain captains and certain upgrade cards, communications plays a huge role in the game. Um, I hate to say I'm a battleship purist. I think once you add aircraft to a battleship game, it becomes an aircraft game. But looking at like Russo-Japanese War and some of that other stuff, that is so easy to do with these rules. And is that going to Russo-Japanese something you guys have thought about?
Oh yeah, I think the Battle of Tsushima would be a perfect example of that. To try to get something into that. Maybe not going back as far as Sail, but anything between then and between the ironclads and World War One is a definite possibility.
Yeah, I that was the first question, because I'm going through all the questions. We here at NDNG were asked about your game, and one of them is Russo-Japanese War. And I'm like, the rules work for that period. I think they just work really well. And I'll tell you what I'm really excited for is the light cruiser type game. Even the commerce rating game, because there's so much you can do there with the game set, and just playing around with different types of scenarios. One is you have the light cruisers escorting a convoy, and then how that plays. And believe it or not, I was trying to see how that would work solo, and it really kind of works. So just some of the different things that in my mad playtesting here, thinking like, wow, that would be a really good addition to this game. I am just so excited for it. And it's, I know you guys said you've been developing it, but you didn't mention how many years. So I'm curious to know how much time has gone by, or maybe you did and I missed it.
Well, I think Davis and I have been talking about this for over a year. As far as the rules go, I've been trying to develop this for probably 3 years now, and kind of off and on with just an idea of what to do and not really a course to take. And then a little over 2 years ago, it kind of something we kind of I don't know where I got the idea to continue with it, but for me, making the ships and a little bit different was kind of the start. Just actually designing the ships themselves.
Yeah, the ships are amazing. I think I've said that a million times. You guys excited? How excited are you guys for this launch? A little nervous?
Oh,
A little
I am.
nervous, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little nervous, yeah. But no, I'm really excited to see how it's going to do. I think it's got a lot of potential, and I think a lot of people are going to enjoy it. So.
Yeah, I personally think I've been asked about it. So I just ran a Great War, Flames of War tournament not too long ago. And I said, hey, does anybody have any questions? And all the questions were about Heart of Leviathan.
Oh, well, that's good to know. Yeah, I don't really know what to expect. I mean, we've literally put our heart into this, and it was a pet of ours, mine especially for some time, and I wanted to go through it, regardless of how it's received. But I've always designed something with the idea that, well, maybe somebody else might like to have this too, and that's kind of been the driving focus.
Yeah, I want to go there for a second. So, as a naval grog, um, I have, if you name a rule set, I have it. And if you look at, I do World War II and 16000 and Great War, Dreadnought period and 2400, that it almost like Napoleonic miniatures games. There's no one rule set that everybody says that's the standard. You have naval games tend to be very complex, especially with some of the larger high-end games that they're not necessarily fun. And the guys that play those are usually the converted. These are hardcore naval war gamers. There's no, and I hate to use, we use a lot on NDNG, a lot of drug references. There's no gateway drug for battleships whatsoever in our community. To me, that's a huge hole. That I think that folks that want to casually play this game, now they have a game to play that's fun, that can be played in under an hour. But I think this is going to feed people to say, hey, there's more naval gaming out there. And I think this is a good gateway drug for that. Was that something as you guys were putting this together wanted to do, or it just happened by accident?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's hard to with family and work and school, and you can't just sit down and devote a whole day to a game. So we saw that, and we wanted to create something different, that you could sit down and play it in an hour or two. Um, have fun with it.
Yeah. And you talk about how that's going to be received. I think once again, this is me talking, but I like to think I listen to the community. Uh, I think folks that have always wanted to get into a battleship game will love this game. I think some of the guys that play those 8-hour naval simulation type games, I think they're going to be hesitant, but folks, if you're one of those that are still listening, try this out. Because if somebody comes to you and say, I want to play a naval war game, they can't go to naval war college the following week. Some of those games are very complex, but this to me is something I would show somebody that's interested in getting into the genre. I think it represents the tactical edge of these ships so well. And then as the game expands, you can have some of these larger engagements using this rule set. So to me, I think this is a no-brainer. So if folks are still listening, obviously they're excited. Where this is going to come out 3 days before, but where can I go on the 5th and order my copy to this game?
The game will be for sale on imagestudios.us. That's our web store, and it probably will only be available there. We won't be going to distribution, and we likely won't be going to any resellers, but strictly through our store. It'll be available for pre-release sale from July the 5th, roughly a month toward the end of July. And then it will be taken down. It won't be available until we are able to produce and ship all of the pre-sales. Once the pre-sales are fulfilled, it will be back on the website for sale at its retail price.
Which will be in November timeframe.
Right. Our goal is to get everything shipped out of the shop by December 1st. Hopefully we'll be before that, but that's kind of the goal we set. And there are all kinds of production problems that could come up that we don't foresee, but that's our goal.
So in the meantime, I believe that you guys are going to have examples of the rules or the rules themselves available for folks.
Yes, I plan to have the rule book itself available for download on the website.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful rule book. I don't know who did some of your graphic layout, but aesthetically, the game is just very pleasing. One of the things that you sent me, and I'm going to thank you for again, is the battle mat. Are you going to be selling those too, or is that something a little later on that you guys are looking at?
Yeah, that's we've got two actually. We've got one that's like the one you've got. That's basically a seascape, and then the other one is a big like a nautical chart, an old aged map type chart. I think it's kind of cool too. And probably what we'll do is kind of release a option poll for somebody who would buy it. And we worked out both of those came from a company called Inked Gaming that did a superb job with it, and we've gotten some prices for them. They're going to be around $50 a piece, and we kind of want to get a pushback or feedback from people before we put them into production to see if there'd be any interest in that at all.
So the one I have, and I think it's beautiful, has all of the navigation type lines, the ordinal, the cardinal lines on it, and everybody always asks, "Is this part of the game?" And I'm like, "Well, no," and they're like, "Yeah," because when they see a naval game, they expect it to be very difficult. But I think it's an awesome mat, and if you catch any of the pictures of any of our play tests, I think other than the initial one, that you can see that mat. It's really kind of neat. But I'm excited for this game. I really am, and I know you guys put so much work into it. I think folks out there would really love it. So before I sign this off and send it back to Sean, I'll leave it to you guys to say anything you want about this great game.
Well, Mitch, I really appreciate the time that you've given us to talk about it. And
no problem.
It's new for us, new for me especially, to put this out. we're trying to build a company as for a board game based company. This is the first release we'll have. We got a few other things that may be possible in the future, but this is our focus right now. And we hope you enjoy it. We had a lot of fun building it, putting it together, and we're going to continue to work with it.
I had a great time, and I want to thank you guys so much for it too, and so did the rest of the No Dice, No Glory crew that went in. And so we should have a little thing here. So one of the play testers was Mike Tunez from Firelock Games, who likes the game, and I'm actually going to play him. I'm going to challenge him to play this game at Historicon in a few weeks. So I want to see how he does without wooden sailing ships.
Yeah, that'll be fun to see. I hope you
Yeah.
keep us up to date on that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you guys know I will. But those guys liked the game. They thought it was really kind of neat, and, they helped play test it. And, once again, great guys that come out with great games. The game will be on the 5th, and I can get that at imagestudios.com.
Imagestudios.us.
Imagestudios.us. Your Facebook page is is it Image Studios or Heart of Leviathan?
Heart of Leviathan primarily, but Image Studios will be kind of a mirror of that.
So you could see it there. We've covered it already a few times on No Dice, No Glory, and I will put the links in. Stay tuned next Monday. I believe that's the 7th, 8th, 6th, 7th, 8th, the 8th. You'll see our leadoff article for this, as well as a link back to this podcast. I'm excited for this one. There's few games I get excited for, and you guys know I love naval games. But really check this game out. I cannot tell you how much we've really enjoyed playing it. And I even pulled play testers that were naval grogs. I pulled guys that don't play historicals. I pulled a lot of different guys, and they all really like the game. Matter of fact, they want those ship data cards for everything. And I'm like, hey, one step at a time. And one of the things also you guys should take away from there is that these guys want to grow the game, and any tweak you do to the game as far as playing it as a gamer, it changes it between how you build your ships and how you upgrade. I've just had so much time playing it. And I think I said the other day, I've probably played a full game or parts of the game about 200 times. I think that was somewhat of an exaggeration, but I'm going to hit that number pretty soon because I enjoy playing this game. I take it with me wherever I go. So if you see me at Historicon in Lancaster, PA, I will have this set up. I'll be running the Blood and Plunder tournament there on Friday the 12th and Saturday the 13th. The game will be set up. I could take you through a game, but the rules are going to be there, guys, and it's just an easy game just to pick up. So try it out. I believe the last time we did that, folks came and found us to play this game. We had a line of folks playing it, and everybody really liked it. And the only question I couldn't answer is, where can I get my copy? And I said, other than stealing it from me, you have to wait till it comes out, and that day's here. So I'll tell you what, guys, thank you so much. I am going to turn it back to Sean at the studio. And once again, Heart of Leviathan, imagestudios.us, 5 July, order a copy. And I think once we have, a lot of people have copies, we can start doing 4 and 4s, right?
Absolutely. It's whatever you want to do.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, I'm excited, and we'll turn it back to Sean in the studio.
Thanks so much for joining the show tonight. Remember to follow us on Twitter at No Dice, No Glory, and keep the conversation going on NoDiceNoGlory.com, now featuring our own message boards. Have a great night, everybody.